Hi, everybody. Welcome to Experts Dig In with Doggies for Dementia. I'm Carmen DeValis and founder of Doggies for Dementia, and I welcome you here tonight. Our special guest is Lori-O'Leary, who is an RN case manager and works directly with people with dementia, all forms of dementia, including Alzheimer's. Welcome, Lori, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, of course. It's been a very, very difficult several months with isolation and the loneliness that goes along with the COVID quarantine. I mean, it's been difficult for everybody and for families impacted by dementia and people with dementia. I can only imagine the challenges associated with that. And I would really love to talk about what it's been like from your side. I mean, we've chatted with families and we've chatted with people with dementia. And I'm a nurse practitioner myself. I haven't been clinical for 3 or 4 years. However, I am so interested in what that's been like for you. Um, I suppose if you have a story about a family, or you would just like to tell us, what has it been like?
Well, it's been challenging for everybody. As you know, one of the major challenges with dementia is maintaining those personal connections, because that's just so important to everybody's emotional well-being. And of course, the disease process makes that challenging, and the isolation really compounds that. There was a study done, I think, by one arm of the company that I work for. It was the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. And this study was done in 2017 and 18. It was before the pandemic hit. And it was researching adverse patient outcomes like falls, pressure injuries, pressure sores, medication errors or adverse effects from medication. And then, of course, there's the depression that can result from isolation. But all of those adverse events occurred, they were 8 times more likely to occur in an isolation situation than in a standard healthcare situation. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
So what you're saying then, if we've got someone who's already vulnerable and then their family can't visit, or if they're at a distance and there's no hugging and closeness allowed,
yes,
they have more falls, they're more apt to get sicker.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there is a real connection, of course, between mind and body. And someone who is becoming more despondent and feels isolated and discouraged, they're going to be less careful. They're going to have less appetite, which can result in increased weakness and lack of mobility. Initially, the facilities that I go to, I primarily see patients in assisted and independent living facilities. I do also see patients in some homes. So I get to work in all 3 settings. And it's been really, really great to get to meet so many wonderful people and their families.
Mm-hmm.
This year, patients who are in a home with family caregivers obviously aren't having quite the impact that the ones in the facilities have had, because most of them, if not all of them, shut down, and we're not allowing anything in the way of visitation. To begin with, they were even reluctant to allow home health nurses in. Initially, we were only allowed for wound care and insulin. But then, go ahead.
Yeah. So, yeah. And having done home health in the past myself, the beauty of house calls is that you, as you said, you get to know people well. And instead of seeing them in an outside clinical setting, like in a clinic or something, in their own home or their own room, which is their home, you can take it all in, right? And offer more support. And so that meant if you could only see people insulin or for wound care, that must have been quite a few of your patients, your clients that you could not even see.
Yes, that is correct. Fortunately, that didn't last that long. 6, 8 weeks maybe, and then they started allowing nursing in. And of course, they have the standard health screening procedures, and we wear PPE when we come in to see our patients. So they're protected.
Right.
And we are too, but of course, their protection is the primary concern because of their vulnerability.
Right.
But in
Right.
nearly every instance, pretty much all the time, we saw rapid decline in patients' abilities, as in their physical as well as their cognitive ability. They were all in need of therapy, which at that point wasn't allowed back in yet.
Like
And
physical therapy, occupational
yes,
therapy.
yes, and speech.
Uh-huh. Oh, right.
Yeah, nursing was allowed in most cases several weeks, if not a month or two before all of the therapy clinicians were allowed back in. And that depended some upon facility policy.
Yeah, that was a question I have for you, Lori. So the decision on who gets to visit, or the term is essential, right? Who's deemed
Yes.
essential to come in, nurses, but not therapists, like the physical therapists and such. And was that a state, or was it a community decision themselves? And most are national, right? So I would think, or
Yeah, many of them are. And I believe that was at the discretion of their board of directors or whatever governing body establishes regulations. So depending on how they interpreted that, the healthcare guidelines by the state or, whatever healthcare authorities are issuing these statements, whether usually it's in some iteration of the original CDC guidelines.
yeah, you see the steam coming out of my ears. I mean, this has just made families loopy, as well as
Yes,
no
yes.
doubt healthcare providers,
Yeah.
because it's not the same from place to place. And so some families were able to do different things, and their loved ones
Exactly.
got more treatment than others did. And it
Yes.
is just, there's no rhyme or reason. And do you think that's going to be different as things go along and change? Have we learned from this? Because clearly it's hurt people.
It has. It's obviously hurt patients and their families, more than many of the rest of us.
Deeply,
Yes.
deeply.
Yeah, it takes a tremendous toll. I can't count the number of patients who've told me it's just killing me to not be able to see my family and my grandkids. And they would allow a visit. Some facilities would allow a visit through a window with the person talking on their cell phone. But a number of my patients said that's just harder than not seeing them at all. They didn't even want to try to do that.
Yeah, and when they say it's killing me, that's a literal statement. The
It is.
damage
It is.
done, loneliness and isolation is like smoking packs of cigarettes a day. It's the impact that it has on the body.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that, yeah, and being 6 feet away now with plexiglass and full PPE and no touching, to me, that's like dangling a carrot almost, and to be so close. And I know some now have taken even that, they've needed to reverse that because the numbers are spiking again. I mean, we're in Texas, but it's nationwide. The COVID numbers are spiking once again. And yeah, so I'm wondering, families are speaking up. I know healthcare providers are speaking up, and we're looking for a uniform way as best possible. Do you know if anything's happened with that?
As
Can
far
we
as
see
I
it
know,
change?
I really haven't seen much change in overall guidelines. The facilities that I work with most frequently, many of them opened back up, were allowing residents to go out to dinner with their families, to have porch visits, et cetera. And they were encouraging them to wear masks. And of course, as you know, the N95 mask is the only one that really stops the virus. So those are absolutely the best ones to wear, but they do restrict breathing, which creates issues for all of our patients with impaired lung function. But all of these patients started doing so much better. They opened up the dining rooms, they started the group activities, They had the chairs distanced. They had, one or two people at a table, but just the social interaction made such an enormous difference in their health and well-being. It was just remarkable.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, it just
so
makes
far that's
sense.
not been reversed. It may start to be as cases climb, but as you know, viruses do this. They're highly contagious, and there's really no such thing as controlling a virus because it's just so prevalent and they are so contagious.
Right.
And the best thing to do, obviously, is to do the hand washing. If you're in a high risk situation or around a vulnerable individual, like one of our dementia patients, wear an N95 mask. And but that you just can't underestimate the value of human interaction and touch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Families were saying they were watching their loved ones literally die through the window.
That's horrifying.
Oh, it's torturous, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
and their loved ones didn't understand why. And some of them were asking, please let me out of jail. And
exactly.
what did I do wrong? And I'm so sorry. If I could take it back, I would. Like it was, they just don't understand. I mean, it's hard enough for all of us to understand this. I think
it is.
There's going to be a day I look back and go, what the heck just happened? It's just all just crazy. And but for someone who doesn't have or doesn't remember and wakes up and they get used ready for the same routine and they can't leave their room.
Yes. Yeah, and the resulting reduction in mobility, and just even for a short time, losing that social interaction, leads to a pretty rapid decline in the ability to communicate and interact.
Yes.
So yeah, it's absolutely essential. And this whole thing has just been the most unusual situation. Always before, if there's been an epidemic, the persons who were affected, the ones who were sick, were the ones quarantined. It wasn't the general population.
You're right about that.
So yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder if we're going to look back on this 10 years from now and say, hey, we did this backwards,
Right. And not considering family to be essential, because one of the arguments that families have is that, well, there are people coming in, nurses, for instance, and there are essential and the caregivers, but y'all go home, y'all have to go grocery shopping, y'all have to get out, and you're seeing other vulnerable people and people who could potentially have COVID or something else. Yeah. And so, I mean, they're like willing to say, we will have one family member who will be quarantined and not anywhere but there. And their answer has been no, you can't.
Yeah, I, not speaking for my company or the healthcare industry in general, I personally believe that is an injustice. It is an unequal application of the regulation. I think families are absolutely essential.
Yeah, well, and thank you for saying that. And I want to be clear too that your opinions are not the opinions of your company. And this is our conversation as two nurses talking about, we got a real crisis here, right? And not that it's anyone else's opinions. And I think I've made my opinion pretty clear along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it seems it's abusive, really, and
I agree.
And the damage that's done to the families that are really, really struggling. And the truth is, it's across the nation. It's different from state to state, location, like we are, location to location, and people are putting their stories together and talking to others, are really getting a strong coalition together to say, okay, no more.
Right.
And
yes.
And even after their own loved ones have passed, they're still standing alongside the others because they know what it has been like.
Yeah.
And
that's wonderful. You need that kind of support.
Yeah, we're doing our best to tell their stories and creating these little documentaries and things on their behalf and sharing, because I can't stand back and say we we support and we're guidance for families and for those with dementia, and not say anything about this, which is yeah, I don't even
For
have words for it. It is just so horrible. And I don't
really
think the
is.
general public quite understands. A few I've mentioned it to have said, well, they're really vulnerable population, so they have to be protected. Like, you got to look holistically here.
That's true. Yes.
And
There are worse things than catching a virus. And,
mhm,
even the research out of the CDC shows that even our most vulnerable geriatric populations still have a 97% some odd survival rate.
mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's,
they're the
we can
highest
be very good at it,
percentage.
but
Yes, right. When it look at total deaths, they're the highest percentage. However, yeah. And the other thing is to say, well, are those family members who are willing to jump through hoops and get tested and just to follow whatever kind of guidelines are provided for them, pretty much, just to be able to be there and to hold their hand and keep
yeah,
them,
absolutely.
some face to face. Are they actually, is that more dangerous than staff that are coming in and out and going home,
Yes,
and around the
I agree
whole,
completely.
they're around the whole community. It's not one staff
Yes.
member to one resident. They're seeing others, but yet the residents are often in rooms by themselves. And it just
Yeah,
did not make, it just was not using common sense. It was like
that's exactly right.
a broad stroke and saying this is the best, and it sounded good, yeah, that's the best thing because we want to keep them safe, but then it went on so long, too
Yes.
long, and it's not in the best. I would sure love to see healthcare providers partner with families to make a change in this across the board.
That's that's a terrific idea because
Yeah.
something needs to happen. In fact, there's been kind of a mass exodus from a lot of the assisted living facilities. Any of those residents that had someone that they could go and stay with, family member. Some even have gone to live with friends,
Yes.
and in that case, then they can see their friends and their family after, wearing a mask and proper hand washing and even getting tested if they feel that that's appropriate. But that interaction is crucial. And when you're looking at quality of life for these patients, dementia, I don't, someone who doesn't work with dementia patients or hasn't dealt with it in a loved one, I don't think they understand. It's like losing little pieces of themselves gradually. And when
Mhm.
you take away that big piece that's family, that's devastating.
Yeah. Oh, I love how you said that. You're absolutely right. It is, it's the little parts that they say goodbye to. Sometimes they don't even realize it. And then to take away the biggest part of what they can associate with, it's just so cruel. It
Yeah,
is
I
so,
agree.
so cruel. And, the thought of like, well, we've got an iPad, let's FaceTime. It, for a lot, that doesn't make sense. It's like,
No,
I don't,
it doesn't. And the brain doesn't process that kind of a conversation the same way. And someone with some cognitive impairment or communication issues, it's so much harder to communicate on a phone or on a video call like this than it is in person. It's just
oh,
nowhere near the same thing.
oh, no. And for some, it just plain doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
exactly. That's
And
the way to put it.
yeah, and some are afraid when they see their family members outside, and we've got masks, we've got, and they're standing out there. It looks like someone, a peeping Tom or something, is standing outside their window, and it's frightening. And then for the care staff, need to gown up too. And I personally was in the hospital in March, early April, for about 4 days and surgery, and I didn't see one person without a mask, and nor could I have any visitors or anything. I don't have dementia. I was otherwise fairly healthy except for the little cancer thing, but I was there and I thought I could not wait to get out.
Yeah,
to,
I'm sure.
yeah, and even though I was still around people with masks and things, it was really, it was so disengaging, and conversations were short, and I couldn't hardly hear because I rely on moving lips, right? I'm
Yeah,
trying to watch and like, I didn't hear
most of
you.
us do.
Yeah, I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you. And of course their visits, everybody is afraid. There's this big fear factor, right? And it was the worst. And that made me think like, what is this like for the families and for the people with dementia? I can't even fathom. And I started looking
Scary.
around, and that's when I found Facebook groups of people talking about it. And I thought, oh goodness sakes, because I just thought I need to get home and heal because this is not healthy at all.
Well, and
Yeah.
fear plays such a big role, especially for my elderly patients,
Yeah.
because they have a lot of fears regarding their own health anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's very easy to scare someone who is already anxious.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of teaching that needs to be done, a lot of reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is very contagious, but we have some really great therapeutic treatments now. People are spending less time in the hospital. They are
Mm-hmm.
becoming less critically ill in many times.
Mm-hmm.
And the vaccines are a week or two away.
Oh, okay. Vaccines. I
That's
think
tremendous.
that deserves.
Yes, there you go.
I mean, I had
Yes,
a little celebration. I'm like, oh my goodness, but how that will change the lives of
yes,
people that I know and I see who've been, I mean, our greatest fear is suffering, right? Not dying, and is the suffering
exactly.
piece. And that is going on. And then to be separated more by being
Hmm.
sick. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you really can't speak to it, but I imagine you've seen what it's been like for actual care staff in the communities. Well, we're talking about making it cohesive, understanding, and more safe and healthy and appropriate for families. Um, it is not like the administration of most communities we're pointing our fingers at. This is like a bigger picture, right? Like
Yes.
across the board, these big national groups that are oftentimes managed by another group.
Right.
And so then what you've got is these people with really big hearts who love their residents and families and are there in the middle.
Yes, that's very true.
And I think about that, and I'm chatting with some because we're photographing, and we're like, we need to, as soon as we can, let's get in and get some of these, because if any time we've learned how important every day is, it's
Yeah,
now, right?
that's for
and
sure.
and I just like, what is that like for y'all? And not many have been willing to say. I mean, it's an awkward position. um,
Yeah.
because that's who they work for, but
Well, and corporations have to be careful because they are legally liable for the people in their care.
yes.
However, our focus is on the health and well-being of our clients.
Hmm.
And, that definitely involves their mental and emotional and social well-being, and directly involves their families being uh,
Yes.
involved as much as possible.
Yeah. And as much as we'd love to look at it as very single-minded, one, let's just keep them safe, meaning COVID free, being first of all, that's impossible when you've got staff that has to, yeah, I mean, it's just
Yes,
impossible.
that is true.
It's really impossible. And second of all, define safe.
Yeah.
Is defined safe, and it is safe mean just strictly COVID free? Are we looking at holistically at all? And I don't know, patient bill of rights, are we just blowing that out of the water? There is such a thing, and they
There
have their
is.
rights. There are family rights. There are people who are the assigned, what are the legal guardians,
Yes.
who haven't been able to observe, who haven't been able to do what they were legally deemed able to do.
Uh-huh.
And it's mind boggling.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing the issues that are not commonly addressed, that have just been overlooked in the general panic about keeping everyone isolated and locked down,
Hmm.
which is just so detrimental.
Right. And these are the things that need to change. It really just needs to change there. Once we can exhale a little bit and like from now and continuation, because there will be something else.
Yeah.
And I think the more who gather for that on all sides, to say we're human beings. And I know people who aren't familiar with dementia. Their thoughts are everybody's older, they get it and they die soon after. And most people are with dementia, they kind of envision them kind of wrapped in a blanket in a wheelchair looking out the window. Well, we know that those are like three really false assumptions, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are loving people who have feelings and memories and legacies and families just like the rest of us. And
Oh, yeah.
they've got some cognitive problems, but they're people like all of us. And
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
and I think one of the best things we can do is be not just a liaison between the other members of the care team, the patient, and the family, but also be advocates for the patient and the family, because they often need, like you're saying, they need someone to stand up for them and say, this is what we need.
Hmm. Well, isn't that part of what we do as nurses? I mean,
Oh,
from the get-go,
absolutely.
we're told you are advocates for your patient when we're not able
Yeah,
to do that, are we? I mean, or for families. And
yeah.
our hands are tied, but that is a big piece of it. And maybe that's something that the larger national organizations of nurses can get involved in, because I'm not clinical anymore, but it still breaks my heart terribly. And I thought, okay, if I was doing this every day, I don't know. I don't know. That would just be so depressing, really depressing, when you really can't do your job and you see people hurting.
Yeah, exactly. Being prevented from helping the people who are depending on you
Yeah,
is just really an untenable situation.
right. Right. So to kind of wrap things, but a little bit of a positive note, now that things are starting, because I could use a glass of wine right about now. I mean, it's just terrible, terrible. And I feel powerless, like many of the families and many of us in healthcare. There's a sense of powerlessness. We got to look at our numbers. There are a lot of numbers that scream power as well. And there's some families out there that are doing really amazing things. We've had them as guests, really, really
Wonderful.
amazing things. Yeah. Um, but now as things are starting to open again, uh, the have you seen, you said you saw some improvement. Has it been enough at this point in time for families and for most? Is it healing for them? Has it been too little, too
Has been.
late? It's been.
It of course depends on the patient and their individual circumstances. The ones, of course, that it's been the most tragic for are the ones who were and with pretty advanced dementia or other advanced health situations. But
Yeah.
the majority of the people that I see rebounded very quickly. As soon as we were allowed, we got nursing and we got all the therapists in and worked with them and increased their mobility. And the facilities, most of them have been wonderful, figuring out creative ways to engage their residents in activities to provide the interaction and the stimulation that they need. And they perked up quickly.
Oh, that
Most
is
of
so
them
relief
made
to hear.
rapid encouraging progress. It was great.
That's wonderful. And I spoke with Catherine Campbell with Alzheimer's Texas, and they received a grant to create some visitation centers that are smaller spaces, apparently. And I haven't actually seen it. I'm anxious to see it.
Wow, that's
Yeah, because I think
wonderful.
that's exciting thing. And at the same time, I've spoken with families, and in fact, let me see if I can move my head. The lady behind the photos behind me, Carol, and Carol last year is it was her, I want to say 94th birthday. And she had dreams of saying she always wanted to be a star, And so we created her whole session around, and she's like me, kind of a glitter girl and loves her hair and makeup stuff. And we, planned her with her daughter. We planned her shopping trip, and
Oh, how
I got
fun.
that on film, and her just having a great time shopping, and then getting her makeup done, and the pampering, and we had a red carpet for her to see her final photos. And then we were quite blessed in that KVU and KXAN each did a beautiful story. So she really was.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I made we in this red carpet event, and that night we had
Oh,
this unveiling of her photos and her videos, her TV,
oh,
and
that's so great.
yeah, and and so she was just in seventh heaven, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And what a difference a year makes. And her daughter is written, she's on hospice, and she had declined so much, and didn't hasn't had that rebound, and nor has her daughter been able to visit. And then I guess there's been COVID in the community itself, in the long-term care community, and visitation even for people on hospice has been um, limited, which again is unfathomable. And so for some, I know it's too little too late. And I'm so glad to hear that there are those that have kind of like a new day. Okay, look, here we go.
Yeah.
And not to say, I mean, the truth is that anybody who elderly and or with dementia, any kind of illness, can cause a decline in their
Yeah, sure
overall.
can.
And then when recovery, they may or may not return to their baseline. And that'll be something to watch for as well. And then, there along will come some things to kind of replenish the body and the spirit once the bigger part of this crisis is over. And I think we'll be hearing more about that too, and how to
Sounds
prepare.
good.
Yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Perhaps we're getting innovative with that as well. I'm not sure. We put our heads together and go, what can we do? Because certainly even Doggies for Dementia, how we started at the beginning of the pandemic, not knowing,
Right. Yeah.
the our vision remains the same, and how we want to support and care for those with by providing the photography and sharing the stories, creating those legacies for people. It has
Such a great
changed.
idea.
Thank you. Some of that has needed to change to accommodate. Um,
Yeah.
so
Well, there's
the,
always a creative way to adapt. Well, at least with most things, there
mm-hmm,
is. And that's one of the great things I've seen is a lot of creativity
mm-hmm,
from the people caring for the residents with dementia.
yes.
One of
Yeah.
the best trends is that those smaller family-centered homes, like the facility where you and I met for the Alzheimer's walk.
Mm-hmm,
That's a more family-centered environment. That's a very small
yes.
facility.
Thank you,
Much.
Lori, because I keep trying to come back to something positive here. So that is, so what are we're looking at? Because there are different, for those who aren't familiar, there are various assisted living and memory cares, and some can be huge, multi-story, and some of them look like, beautiful resort type settings. And some are really just smaller personal care homes, and like 7, 13. I forget what the law is, the max, but it's in the lower teen numbers, I think, per home. And they gather together to cook. It's really like living at home.
Yeah.
And I could see how that could certainly be an advantage
In
at
a
this
smaller
time.
environment, it's a lot easier to have family be involved.
Yes. Yeah. And then I know some families are attempting to care for their loved one at home. Um, and as one family member came on and said, she goes, Carmen, if I could have done this in the beginning, I would have done it in the beginning. And then when the lockdown started to happen, that day when she got wind that that was what was going to happen, she took her parents home, like
Uh-huh.
unprepared.
A lot of folks did.
Unprepared, let's just go, and thinking, I don't know how long this is going to last. And it a lot of challenges, but she did it and just kept her eye on the focus, which was her parents. And then they found an alternative, which happened to be a personal care home as well, close to them. And so families are rethinking, but to say, well, then they should just take them home is really being so naive to the real, how
It
hard it
is.
is and the
Yeah.
sacrifices. Yeah. Yeah. What have you seen? And we'll kind of try to wrap this because I keep trying to go back to positive thing here.
I know. I know.
It's been a heartbreaking for me to stand by and watch. And well, and that's just me standing by and watching, right? So those that are in it, and I know, as you said, we get creative communities. So what have you seen in communities that they've done as far as activities and engagement wise to really up that game even more than they were doing?
Well, when they were beginning to have activities, but they still wanted that distancing, a lot of the facilities would do chair volleyball. They'd have the people spaced 6 feet apart, sitting on a chair, and they had a beach ball, and they would have the net in the middle and hit the ball back and forth, or using a balloon with a pool noodle to smack the smack the ball over. They've had contests for decorating their walkers, and then had a parade down through the facility, 6 feet apart, for the judges to judge the the walkers and the wheelchairs that were
Ah,
decorated.
ah,
There's been all sorts of stuff. They separated the tables in the dining room and moved in smaller tables, so that if husband and wife were together, they had a table for two. Otherwise, there were individual tables, so that more people could be in the dining room and still be separated a bit.
so is a compromise there. They're eating alone, but they don't have to eat in their room alone.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
the others, I see. Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, most communities have a pretty active activity
Yeah, they do.
schedule, and that's had to change.
Mhm.
Things are different. Even the crafts and things, people sitting side by side
True.
is not happening. And
They're
yeah,
they're doing that too. They're doing their crafts and their bingo at separate tables, and having their margarita Wednesdays and whatever with their snacks at separate
what
tables, and they
what
still
time
get
would
to
that margarita? What time would
chat.
that margarita Wednesday be? Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, we better not try to do a visit during Margarita Wednesday, because we will be waiting till they are done.
Correct,
It's
correct.
important.
Yeah, it used to be Friday afternoons, and heaven forbid if I was running late and I needed to, the Friday events, and be
Uh-huh.
like, well, I'm going to be here till dinner time, between
Right.
happy hour and dinner time, because I have this little window of opportunity because I was running late. Yeah. Yeah. What's been the greatest outcome from this, do you think?
Uh, well, in general, I think a greater awareness of how much we depend on that personal, close connection with families. That's like most things, you don't realize how much you value it until it's not readily available.
Hmm.
As a home health nurse, it's been really fulfilling for me to be able to kind of be a liaison, where patients weren't being able to talk to their families, well, talk to them, but not see them face to face. I could provide a more personal update than the busy staff could at a facility. So we got to do a lot more coordinating, and got closer, I think, to the patients and their families, providing that connection, kind of bridging that gap a little bit. So that's been great, and I got to meet some wonderful people, and it's great to see how committed families are to sticking together and helping in any way that they can, you know, to do the best they can for their elderly relatives and friends.
I so love that. Those are all examples of why most of us went into nursing in the first place,
True,
right? Yeah, to care for people and to make the world a better place. Yeah, for
yeah. Yep,
all
for
this.
sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to personally thank you and applaud you for being here and talking to us about this. It's a touchy subject, and it is so controversial and yet so important. And to give us a little insight of what it's like, you know, basically from the other side, from the inside, and to share that wisdom. And it gives me some hope, because I know it's not just those of us watching from the outside and saying, wow, something has to be different. We got to change this. Got to change this. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and
Mhm.
it's been encouraging to hear your insight as well.
Yeah, thank
So
you. Thank you. Well,
we
I know
appreciate.
we're going to get some comments on this, because
Yeah,
it's a very emotional topic. I mean, we're really talking life and death here, and in no uncertain terms. And
absolutely.
it's a when we say, well, what is comes around next time, we'll make a change. The truth is, it needs to happen like now.
Yeah, yeah, it
Hmm.
does. If we work together, there's a lot we can do.
Hmm. Yeah. You're planting the seed, because December is my planning month. So there you go.
Very good.
Planning for
That's a
2021.
good one.
Yeah, yeah. I already have my special glasses that I put on as I'm doing my planning, and
Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
that's no joke. And I'm getting ready for 2021 and growing our board and doing everything that we can. And this is you know, kind of a pivotal thing for us. Yeah. So thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate it. And
Very welcome.
thank you all for watching Experts Dig In with Doggies for Dementia. We'll catch you next week. Take care. Bye bye.